The first process, the plan quality management. This is a continuous process, not done at a single point in time, because the targets and deliverables, they can change during the course of the project. So this cannot just be implemented at the start of the project or at the end of the project, because the quality keeps on changing. So many things gets added up. This thing, it's implemented throughout the course of the project. So let's see what outputs we have to achieve. Okay, starting with the quality management plan. As you can see, this is again a component of the final project management plan. So we have 10 components. I keep repeating it. We have 10 components in the final project management plan, and quality management plan is one of those 10 components of the project management plan. So what are we doing here? Through this process, we create a quality management plan which could contain, it can have objectives, it can have roles and responsibilities of the people, it will have the processes identified for each deliverables, controlling plan, controlling tools, what kind of tools that we are going to use to control the quality of a product. So all these things, like, don't worry so much about the format. The format is organization specific. Just know that these things can be added to this format. Even if you find in your own organization, you might see a different format which might not have the components that I just mentioned. So the program management or the project management doesn't limit you from using any additional components than what I mentioned, but these things can be part of it. Quality metrics. This is everything about how we plan to measure the defects. So you might have heard the term PPM. PPM, parts per million. It's a very famous term. So this is nothing but how many defects a product can give if the organization produces a million number. So this is usually given targets like 10 ppm is my target. So the customer gives the organization a number saying that your product must have just 10 ppm. You have to control your quality within just 10 ppm. So just an example. So within, if you produce 10, 10 lakh, or a million is called 10 lakhs in India. So if you produce 10 lakhs parts, only 10 defects are allowed in those 10 lakh parts, or in million parts, only 10 defects are allowed. So such statements or agreements are made between the customer and the organization. So such things, or it can be measured not just in ppm but also in downtime per month. It can be measured in failure rate, how many parts per 100, how many parts per 1,000, depending on the product. If you are making huge cranes, for example, there will never be a million cranes made. So it makes no sense in giving the defects in ppm for a crane manufacturer. So in that case, defects per hundreds are given. So all these things are captured in quality metrics. Yeah. Next thing is project management plan updates. What can be updated here? The risk management plan can be updated. The scope baseline can be updated as outputs, and different project documents also gets updated. Like lessons learned can be updated. Requirements traceability matrix can be updated. Risk register can be updated, or might even the stakeholders register can also be updated. Right? So all these things are going to be outputs after we finish with the plan quality management process. Okay, let's have a look at the inputs we need. The project charter to know the success criteria, the project management plan as an input, and here you need not use the complete project management plan. You can use like the risk management plan, the components, the stakeholder management plan, the requirement management plan. All these things can be used as a basis for the plan quality management. And then the project documents are also used as inputs. You can see these are your inputs and also outputs. That just means that these are the unupdated versions, and here are the updated versions of the project documents. So if we go to the details, we can consider assumptions log, or requirements documents, risk register. Again, the same things that I mentioned here, they can be part as a unupdated versions as inputs. So, and of course, we have the enterprise environmental factors and the organizational process assets also used as inputs. Okay, let's jump to the tools. Expert is consulted always again. So here, because we are discussing about plan quality, the quality methods expert is usually consulted. And we have data gathering tools. What tools can this be? Benchmarking the competitors. Benchmarking means finding the in class and then comparing our product with them. And brainstorming can be one good data gathering for quality management. And sometimes people also do interviews of some experienced seniors, industry seniors. There are so many seniors and consultants who are retired, and but their knowledge still stays with them. So some organizations go and also interview such senior candidates to understand the quality tools. Anyways, the data analysis techniques, we have learned so many data analysis techniques, but for the sake of plan quality management, the organization can go for cost benefit analysis. We have learned that this actually checks whether the quality inspection methods are cost effective or not. And then cost of quality, we just learned what cost of quality is, right? So that is also one data analysis tool. And just also be aware of cost of poor quality. Decision making, so this is nothing but prioritizing the list of solutions and then choosing the right one. That's decision making. And data representations, how we can represent the information more easily. For quality specifically, we can use flow charts, matrix diagrams, or mind mapping. Mind mapping, mind mapping, right? Or for those who don't know, mind mapping is nothing but visually organizing the information. I think we talked about this before. What happens here is all the ideas are written on sticky notes. They're pasted on a blank board, and then all these ideas are distinguished. They are grouped based on different categories or criteria which are suitable for the product. This is called mind mapping. Okay, so testing and inspection planning. Some of them are requested by customer. So the customer says you have to test your product for these tests, and some are by regulation. The government says that for example, for a car emission, the emission test has to be done before it comes on the road, right? So the drive test has to be done before it comes on the road. So all these regulations, because of the regulations, we have to do the tests, and some are by the rules within the organization. So finally, the meetings can also be the right tool to achieve the quality. So let's move to the next process: managing the quality. Managing the quality, here we actually execute what we have planned, right? So I think I already told you this. So this process is also performed throughout the project. So let's quickly have a look at the outputs. We have a lot of processes to cover. So the quality reports will be the result of this process. It might include all the issues which came up with during the course of the project. Second thing would be test and evaluation reports. How the product or service has performed during the test phase is understood here as an output. And then the change requests which were resolved are also listed. The project management plan gets updated. Project documents gets updated. Project management plan, if you go to the specific here, the quality management plan that we discussed before, that gets updated. The scope baseline may get updated. The cost baseline may get updated, right? So if you talk about the documents, the lessons learned register, register, the issues log, all these documents can get updated in the outputs. Let's quickly jump to the inputs. The project management plan, of course, will act as an input for many processes. The project documents, again, the same thing. Whatever documents I mentioned here, they are the unupdated versions are used as inputs. And the organizational process assets is also important inputs. I'm rushing to the tools. Data gathering techniques, we have learned before. Data analysis techniques, we have also learned before. But what happens here is, for managing the quality, you can use root cause analysis as the main tool. Root cause analysis, right? So usually, 5W1H. 5W1H, let me write it down. 5W1H or 4W1H. It's like you ask the question why, when, who did it. Such questions are asked, and then we arrive at the root of the quality. So, and another similar tool can be, we ask the questions 5 times. Like, a problem has occurred. This is a problem. Why has it occurred? We get some answer. And then why has it occurred? We get some answer. Why has it occurred? We get the answer. So like this, we reach the root of the problem. Keep on asking, why did that happen? Why did that happen? Why did that happen? And then we reach to the root of the problem. So such data analysis methods can be used. Clearing it all. Decision making is a very good technique. We have learned that before. So data representation, what kind of data representation can we do for managing the quality? Again, the flow charts can be used, the histograms can be used, the Pareto charts can be used, fishbone diagram. So fishbone diagram is nothing but the cause and effect diagram. It's like you have the end problem listed here, and then we, in a brainstorming session, we start posing all the different possible reasons for it. possible reasons. These need not be the root causes. So for a defect X to happen, reason A, reason B, reason C, reason D, all these things could be the reason for problem X to occur. And then for A to happen, again further reasoning is done. For example, 1, 2. Similarly, for B to happen, what more branches? You can see this is in the form of a fishbone. So this is called a fishbone diagram, or we have causes here and we have effect here. So that is why it is called cause effect diagram. So this is designed by famous Ishikawa, the Japanese quality inventor. So this is also called Ishikawa diagram. So 3 names for it: Ishikawa diagram. So this is called Ishikawa diagram, fishbone diagram, cause and effect diagram. All these are the same names for this. So that is a very important data representation tool. You might get one question on this, or even you might not. So don't worry too much. Audits serve as a very good tool to manage the quality. And what is design for X? Sounds interesting, right? So design for X is nothing but, again, let me use the pen tool. Design for X. What does it mean? So X can be manufacturing, X could be cost, X could be assembly, X could be reliability, anything. You can keep on adding to the list. That means when you read this statement out, it's like design for manufacturing, design for cost, design for assembly, right? So when you are designing something, you have to make sure that the product, for example, a pencil has to be designed for manufacturing. It should be easy for manufacturing. It should be designed for cost. It should be cost effective pencil. It should be designed for assembly. We are getting mechanical pencils now. So if we are designing that, so we have to make sure that it is designed for assembling it properly. And then it has to be designed for reliability. It has to be reliable once it goes into the market. So that is this design for X. For every aspect that you can think of, you have to design the product for that. You cannot just design the product for manufacturing and then ignore the cost. No, that's not the case, because we will lose a lot of money just for manufacturing or just for using that. The pen or the pencil becomes more expensive. That's meaningless. So that is why this X is given, because everything is applicable here. So this is an important tool. Every time a product is made, it is verified by the designers, whether it is designed for manufacturing, whether it's designed for cost, designed for assembly or not. All these discussions happen with multiple parties. Right? Designer's job is not easy. And then problem solving techniques, we have learned some of them, but this is actually quite specific to the product, because here the problem occur on the product, right? So instead of using generic tools, some industry approved standard practices are followed for that particular product. And finally, the quality improvement methods, like we have discussed this, TQM, total quality management, Six Sigma, all these improvement methods are also followed to manage the quality. Moving on, controlling the quality. So this is also done throughout the project before we move to the outputs. So just keep that in the back of your mind. So let's have a quick look at the outputs. What do we have to do? We have to control the quality measurements. So this is nothing but the documented results of the quality control activities. So verified deliverables, all the requested deliverables reported after the suitable inspections. Work performance information, this is about how the product has formed, how many rejections happened, what corrective actions were implemented. It talks about that. The change requests are recorded after the process is done, and then the project management plan is updated, project documents are updated. Let's move to the inputs. Project management plan, of course, it is used in almost all processes as inputs. For example, here the quality management plan can be the source as input. Project documents like lessons learned register, again, or the quality metrics, all these things can be used as inputs. Approved change requests can serve as inputs. All the deliverables listed, work performance data that is done so far, and of course the enterprise environmental factors and organizational process assets serve as inputs to us. I'm rushing it out because we have learned all these things before. If we have not learned something, then I'll stop and then try to explain you much better. Data gathering tools as tools, we have learned these. Data analysis techniques, we have learned enough of them, I think. Inspection. Okay, here different inspection methods suitable for the product design are used. I think we have also talked about this. Same for the testing. We have learned the data representation, and finally the meetings. Okay, with that said, I think you already know that control quality is much easier in all three. Managing quality was a bit difficult. So with that, we end this knowledge area of the project quality management. Let's see what we have in the project resource management. So we have ended another project management area. This is the next project knowledge area. So project resource management, what is this? This process was earlier. When I say earlier, it was before the sixth PMBOK guide. In fifth and fourth, this used to be called as human resource management. So starting from sixth PMBOK guide and also the seventh, we have seen that this is being called project resource management, not just human resource management. Why? Because now the PMI and thinks through its PMBOK guide that not just the humans but also other aspects, like machinery, the tools, the infrastructure, everything acts as a resource for a product to come out. So it makes a really good sense to consider that way too. So that is why from sixth guide PMBOK onwards, it is being called the project resource management instead of just the human resource management. So here you get to learn the processes which control the other resources, not just human resources. Okay, let's have a quick look at the processes that we have. Here we have 6 processes to cover, starting with the planning of the resource management. What do we do here? Here we define how to estimate, acquire, manage, utilize all the physical team resources. In estimating the activity, we learn how to estimate the number of raw materials, the machines, the standard parts, nuts and bolts. Just a few examples. Acquired resources, how to procure the machinery, how to acquire a building, the facility for the office, how to acquire a land for the manufacturing plant, even deals about human resource recruitment. All these things are part of this acquire resources process. And then develop a team. I think we have learned about this in the introduction class. There are 2 ways to develop a team. One, you either develop an existing team or you get to choose a team from scratch, right? So 2 methods. And managing the team, here we learn how to track the team performance, right? How to provide them the feedback, all these things. Finally, controlling of the resources. This deals with, how the allocated resources are performed, and different monitoring techniques. All these things we get to learn in the control resources. So before we go much deeper or learn these processes, as a project manager, you have to be aware of the environment in which the team is working. It is important to get a sense of behavioral patterns of the team, the emotional intelligence. I think I already covered this emotional intelligence topic in our first class. It comes quite handy here because here we are dealing with humans. So they are people just like us. They are not just a head count or a number. So in fact, using the emotional intelligence is one of the latest trends in the process, right? So we are talking about latest trends in all the knowledge areas. So in this knowledge area, the emotional intelligence, the use of emotional intelligence is a trending process. So if we talk about other emerging trends, some resource management methods, some new methods like just in time. Let me write it down. JIT. It is famously called just in time. So this is becoming trending nowadays. Kaizen. Kaizen is also another Japanese word. Kaizen is a small improvement, towards the process. So Kaizen is also a very trending topic. And then we have discussed TPM, the total product management, total quality management. All these things we have learned. Plan resource management. So this process is done only at predefined times. It is not done throughout the project. Why? Because it makes more sense to define the resources and not change it. Because with the change in the team member, when a resource like a huge machine is changed, now it is no longer available for us. A lot of project related knowledge and the statuses, they move away, right? So they might think, the HR might think that removing a stakeholder will be very easy. Like replacement could be very easy, but it's not always the case. So a lot of knowledge goes away with that candidate. So it creates a void in the project. So for this reason, planning of resources is done only at specified times. They don't consider that, okay, this candidate is going to move on. No, they don't do that. So let's see what we have to achieve here. We have resource management plan created. So also one of the important points of the final project management plan. So what information does it contains? Identification of the resources, how we have acquired the resources, what are the roles and responsibilities of each of these resources. All this thing is mentioned here. Now it could also include like training plan, rewards and recognition history. All these things can happen. Team charter, new term, right? We have discussed about project charter before, but I think team charter we are hearing for the first time here. So this is nothing but an agreement. You remember a project charter is an approved agreement, right? So here also team charter is an agreement that holds the values or the operating guidelines within the team. So this is done so that the expectations of the behavior of the team or behavior from the team is clear to everyone, right? So we expect something from the team and the team has to agree for this. So just a set of organizational rules given to the new team or the project rules, because every project is special. Some customer might expect communication to happen in certain way, some meetings to happen in an organized manner, some reports to be given to them regularly, some specific standards from the customer, they are to be used for giving them the reports, right? So all these rules are given in this team charter. They are taught to the team, right? And then the agreement is given. Moving on to the project update, project documents update. Here, this is also a regular process. You must have seen in all the processes. All the relevant project documents gets updated after we finish with the process, right? So here it could be assumptions log, it could be risk register, etc. Let's look at what inputs we have. Project charter, just mind the difference. This is a project charter, this is a team charter. So project charter serves as an important input. We have project management plan. So here we can make use of quality management plan or scope baseline. All these things come handy as inputs. The project documents are used as inputs. Here the risk register, project schedule, or you might consider stakeholder register because we are planning the resources. That comes handy. So whenever you sit to work on any resource as a project manager, you have to make sure that all these things are handy. So, and of course, the enterprise environmental factors and organizational process assets is important in almost all the processes. Just the common repeated inputs. So moving on, tools and techniques, the expert consultancy. You might have seen this is also an important tool in almost all the processes. So I think by now you might be answering these things quite easily. If a question comes, what are my tools in plan resource management? And then expert judgment is one of the options that you see. You can easily select these things. So that is why I'm representing this in examination format, so that these terms, because you are seeing this as I'm talking, these terms get stick, within in the back of your mind. So just learn these things. So data representation tools, we have talked about expert judgment, data representation. We have learned a few data representation tools in our previous knowledge areas, but here we could make use of the other tools, like hierarchical charts. As the name says, what is the hierarchy of the humans, like, or human resources, like who is your boss and who is his boss and who is his boss, who is the ultimate boss, right? So that kind of hierarchy in the organization, that can be represented when managing the human resources. And resource assignment matrix, it's famously called RAM, resource assignment matrix. What happens here is that they relate the work to the resource. So this particular work is going to be done by this systems engineer, for example. This kind of code is being written by this IT engineer, for example. So that is RAM. And then we have RASIC charts, RASIC. What does it mean? It just means who is responsible, who is accountable, who is the support role, who is to inform when I'm doing something, and who is to consult if I have a problem. So these things are the data representation tools. Organizational theory. This is also a new term to you. So let's spend a few seconds also here. So this is nothing but the information on the laws of the organization. So every organization has its own set of rules, regulations, laws. So a set of common techniques that the organization has been using throughout the years in all of its experience. So that is theorized. Okay, so that is the organization theory. And of course, the meeting also can be a really good tool for almost all the processes. Moving on, estimate the activity resources. This is also mind that this is also not done throughout the process, but it is done at the set intervals. So this is similar to the other estimating processes, like the cost estimation. We do the similar estimating activities. So let's see the outputs. The resource requirements are finalized basis of estimates. Just the justification of why the resources are required there, and resource breakdown structure. Similar to WBS we learned. So here the resources are broken down, not exactly, but the hierarchy is given. So project documents get updated. What documents can be updated here? The activity attributes can be updated. Assumptions log can be updated. Lessons learned can be updated. So let's see the inputs. The project management plan, of course, an important input for almost all the processes. Here we can make use of the scope baseline, and the resource management plan can be used as a very important input. When we talk about project documents, we can make use of activity list, assumptions log, risk register, resource calendars. We are talking about estimating the resources. So the availability of resources. This is very, very important, because sometimes an employee or a stakeholder might be planning for a very long leave, a maternity leave for 2 years, right? So in that case, the complete project might even be finished by then, before the candidate comes back. So it is an important thing to know that an activities calendar is also used as an important factor, as an important project document. And then, of course, the enterprise environmental factor used as an input. Organizational process assets is always used as an input. Just a common input for almost all the processes. Let's quickly go through the tools. We have expert consult, bottom up estimating. I think we have learned also about this before. Analogous estimating, nothing but using the previous experience. Parametric estimating, I think we have learned all these things in the cost estimate activities, right? You do remember parametric? It's nothing but use of statistics to the analogous estimating. Multiple data analysis tools can be used, and then of course the PMIS and the meetings are very important tools for this activity. Moving on, activity resources. As the name says, this is to obtain all the resources, like people, facilities, materials, etc. Right. So this is also done at set time periods. Especially as and when needed. So let's take a quick look at the expected outputs. Okay, we have 8 outputs expected here. First thing is the physical resource assignments. This is nothing but a written document on the records of material and supplies. So all the records of whatever materials we have, whatever supplies we are left with, all that thing comes here in physical resource assignments. The project team assignments, again, similar written down documents on roles and responsibilities of the team. Right. So here, this is more focused on the physical resources, like not everything except humans. And here it focuses more about human resources. And as we have talked about resource calendar, a very, very important thing that gets updated. The change requests get updated, how this will impact the schedule and all. And project management plan is updated. The main important thing that gets updated here is the resource management plan and cost baseline. Project documents get updated. Here also lessons learned register, project schedule, resource breakdown structure, all these things come under these project documents that gets updated. Okay, something interesting here. You might have seen enterprise environmental factors always in the inputs and not in the outputs, right? But here you see these two, enterprise environmental factors and organizational process, as outputs, not inputs, right? Why? That's because we are going to update the resource availability, right? So the number of employees or the knowledge base of the organization is going to get updated after we acquire new resources, right? So we might hire a lot of PhDs, some a very high level financial manager. So the enterprise environmental factors, the internal factors especially, they have to be updated with this addition of new resources. So not just the human resources, you might consider very expensive testing machine is added, or a very expensive manufacturing machine is added. When you're talking about creation of a aeroplane, for example, or a rocket manufacturing. So in this, a huge resource gets added, and that definitely affects the enterprise environmental factors, internal factors especially. So that is updated. And why is organizational process updated? Because new people are joining, and fresh assignment of resources is done. So the processes might also get updated. . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . Let's have a look at the inputs. Here we make use of the project management plan, existing project management plan, and then the project documents. When we ask specifically, we can make use of the resource calendars. We have talked about this before. The stakeholder register can also be an important project document. And of course, the environmental factors and organizational factors, the unupdated versions are used as inputs here, and then we add the tools and then we update it as outputs. Let's see what tools we need. We need decision making techniques. We have learned, talked about this enough. Interpersonal and team skills, the soft skills that are important here. Pre-assignment, something new. So what happens here is some of the resources, be in people or machinery, if it is considered to be present in the new project in advance is the stress here. We have to gather this information, right? So there are some key people and key machinery in the organization already before we start the project who cannot be left out from this important upcoming project. Like, for example, Mr. John. Mr. John is considered to be present in all the upcoming projects within that program, right? So such important pre-assignment of resources is done because they are key people for the organization. They have been here, they know the processes, they have worked from the ground level in many of the projects before. So this kind of information is very important. We cannot leave these kind of resources, right? So this pre-assignment is a very, very important thing for the project to run successfully. Virtual teams, I think we talked about this also in the introduction. So this is nothing but involving the teams who are working from home. Moving on, develop a team. Here the development can be twofold. I think I already mentioned this. First is to improve the competence of the team, and second is to develop the new team from the scratch. So as the competence is something which cannot be just given to them at one point, it has to be developed over the process, right? So that is why this process is done throughout the project, not just at one point in time. We cannot just develop the team at the start of the project, or we cannot develop the team at the end of the project. It has to be done throughout the process. So let's quickly have a look at our targeted outputs. Team performance assessments. Here the team performance is measured, and after the identified trainings are given. We give training to the team and then we measure the performance. So change requests, if in case any changes happen with the team because of the development process, then the change requests are ensured to be updated. Project management plan is updated, project documents are updated, same thing gets repeated. Here also you can see the enterprise environmental factors and organizational process assets are updated as outputs and not as inputs. So what happens here is for enterprise environmental factors, consider the employment development plan records are updated. So any certifications which add value to the company. So consider TUV certification, right? So or somebody is now a Six Sigma certified. So somebody is a PMP. We are learning about PMP, right? So we have so many PMPs in our organization, right? So such environmental factors are updated within the organization. And then for organizational process assets, we can talk about training requirements and personal assessment gets updated. So this has to be updated after developing the team. Let's see what inputs we need. The project management plan, of course, as inputs. The project documents are used as inputs, again, general inputs. So if we detail about this, we can make use of lessons learned. We can make use of project schedule, resource calendars, also important. The team charter is also important. And of course, this goes without saying, the enterprise environmental factors and organizational process assets are also used. Let's have a quick look at the tool. We are running out of the time, so I don't want to miss any processes that is going to come. Okay, collocation, something new, right? Here, this is about gathering the high performing team members. What happens is all the masterminds or the experienced people within the organization, they are gathered and then they are discussed about one particular problem. Nothing but acceleration of outputs. Some crash teams or problem solving teams, the brainstorming sessions, all these things together, it's called collocation. In simple words, these are just meeting rooms, or war rooms. So that process is called collocation. Virtual teams, use of technology, better connectivity to remote teams, right? So that's virtual teams. We spoke about this enough. Communications technology. This goes with the previous tool, the virtual teams. So here, if you specifically talk about the technology, we make use of the shared drives, the Zoom calls, Teams calls. All these things are very good tools for developing a team. Interpersonal and team skills. like conflict management, motivation, leadership. All these things come under the interpersonal team skills. Rewards and recognition, also a very powerful tool. This boosts the team performance, and proper training needs are to be given to specific area. When a person is new to the design team, he has to be given training in the design team. Such training plan is identified and given to them, and then individual and team assessment, they're done separately. This helps in understanding the proper statuses of the project, and then finally the meetings always help. Okay, moving on to the next important process, managing the team. This process, as you can see, and you might have guessed it right, this is also done throughout the process, not just at one point in time. So this focuses mainly on tracking the performance, optimizing the performance, and then also on resolving some issues. Okay, let's quickly take a look at the outputs. The change requests, if any, are to be updated. The project management plan gets updated. The project documents are updated. If you ask about specific components of the project management plan, for example, resource management plan gets updated, the cost baseline gets updated, schedule baseline can get updated, and of course the enterprise environmental factors is also updated here. Why is it updated here? Personal skills are added after the manager assesses the teams, or the complete organizational performance might have improved because the manager has managed the team really well. So all these things are added here. Okay, let's move to the inputs. Here also the project management plan, project documents serve as very important inputs. Work performance reports, till date, whatever are the latest, are used as very important inputs. The team level performances are important inputs for the process also. And of course, the enterprise environmental factors and organizational process assets. Let's take a quick look at the tools and techniques also. Okay, here we have just two tools to use to manage the team. First thing is the interpersonal team skills. We have discussed a manager must have a conflict management skills. He should have emotional intelligence. He should have motivation for the team. He should have very nice leadership qualities. We have discussed about who is a manager, who is a leader. So leadership qualities are very, very important for every manager. And PMIS is also a very effective tool to manage the teams. Moving on, the last process of the day, controlling the resources. This process actually deals with ensuring that the resources allocated and identified are actually available for the task, more like monitoring the resources. So this also is performed throughout the project. So let's have a look at the expected outputs. Here the work performance information on how the project work is progressing, that will be the output of the project. The change requests are updated as output. The project management plan gets updated. What can get updated here? The resource management plan gets updated. The schedule baseline gets updated. Cost baseline gets updated. So, and the project documents also gets updated. Like lessons learned register, issues, risk register. All these things are updated here. What can we use as inputs? Project management plan, of course. Project documents, all the documents that we spoke here. Lessons learned, risk register, physical resource assignments, all these things. Because we are talking about resources, I'm focusing on those documents. All those documents can get handy here. Work performance data on the current project, this also serves as a very important input. Agreements, we talked about this, the letter of intent, memorandum of understanding, non-disclosure agreements, all these kinds of agreements. And also the internal team agreements within two different teams, within two different projects. If we are having programs or portfolios, all these agreements are also important. Organization process assets, we have discussed that it is a repeated input. Let's have a look at the tools and techniques. We have 4 tools to make use of. Different data analysis tools are used. We can make use of trend analysis. We can make use of cost benefit analysis. Alternate analysis can be a very good tool. Problem solving techniques, we have learned about this. Like in the very beginning, we discussed PDCA, plan, do, check, act. Right. So such problem solving tools. Ishikawa diagram we talked about. The fishbone diagram. Right. So all these are problem solving techniques. Interpersonal and team skills like negotiation and influencing, these two are very important here, more like the soft skills. And finally, the project management information system. Okay. Hi and hello everyone. Welcome back to this PMP exam. We have come really deeper into the course now. We have just 4 more knowledge areas to cover. So we started with the latest exam updates. We have covered the exam content overview, where we learned the domains, and then the project management introduction moving forward. So lecture is going to cover two of these knowledge areas: project communications management and then project risk management. So let's just quickly jump into the topic: project communications management. So actually, there are two parts to this process. The part of the process which helps us develop a strategy that makes sure that the stakeholders receive the communication as efficiently as possible. So we learn about something called artifacts, if you recollect the work from your introduction class. And the second part, which totally focuses on the activities that are necessary to implement. It's like, now that the artifacts are created, now we'll focus on the implementation part. So this project communications will be learned into such parts. We all send and receive information consciously or unconsciously, right? So sometimes we consciously give away some information on the business or the project, and sometimes we do it without thinking about it, in just a casual talk. I'm not stressing whether we are giving away the right information or not. The part here must be to focus on the flow of the knowledge. So in most of the cases, the flow is not done strategically, consciously, yes, but usually without using any strategy or planning. So if we develop some plan or strategy to the project related communications as the act of sending and receiving information, we'll be able to successfully manage the project relationships with the stakeholders. So this strategy, whatever we're discussing, it would target to develop a communication plan that would make sure only the required amount of knowledge or information are communicated to the stakeholders. So, and this is done using specific formats or specific messaging media as per the predefined strategy. I mentioned that we should transfer only the right amount of information, not because our own stakeholders shouldn't be aware of what is going on, right? So don't misunderstand me, but I told that the right information should be given. I mean, only the required information should be transferred, because the excess unnecessary information, it might lead to miscommunications. So the PMBOK guide, 6th edition, 7th edition, it in fact stresses so much about avoiding this miscommunication or misunderstanding from the stakeholders, that it has even guided us to use 5 C's of communication. So 5 C's of communication. So, I mean, why I'm insisting this so much is that it is already mentioned in the PMBOK guide. That means it must be something important as a project manager while you are executing. All these things may not come in the exam, but it is important that you learn this. It will be easier for your, broadening your understanding of what communications actually are. Right. So, what these 5 C's are: first thing is correct grammar and spelling. So, wrong spellings, first of all, they diminish our credibility. And secondly, they can distract people from actual right message. They tend to focus on the spelling mistake more than the message. So it's important that the correct grammar is used. And second C is concise expression. So this stresses so much not to use unnecessarily additional words. We all have dealt with that colleague who writes, a 500-word essay, which confuses us more than it convinces us. So it's better to use as concise emails and information flow as possible. Third C is going to be the clear purpose. So this means that the message has to be targeted only to that user, not to the world.com, who is always in CZ. And then the fourth C is going to be the coherent flow of ideas. Coherent means something which is well structured information, which summarizes, and highlights the key messages to the reader. So you must have seen also such beautiful emails which summarizes, which underlines what is the summary of that essay that is written there. So such things are coherent flow of ideas. And then the fifth C is talking about controlling the flow. Just reread before you pass any information. Just make sure you are controlling whatever information that you're giving. So just understand that also there are 3 simple steps to learn this communications process. First thing is going to be the clarity on the purpose, right? So you have to have clarity on, again, 2 things here: whether you're sending the information or receiving the information. So you need both clarity on sending the information, clarity on receiving of the information. That's 2 things. And third is monitoring and measuring the effectiveness of this communication. So before we move ahead in the process, also know what are the latest trends that are being followed, right? So in so many of the processes, we have learned what are the latest trends of the process. So in project communications also, we have latest trends. Like the first thing could be the stakeholders are being involved in all the project related reviews. So earlier, what used to happen? Only the higher management, the senior managers used to present all the project related topics to the higher management. But now it is being deployed slowly, allowing the people who are actually working at the ground level to give direct information to the bigger bosses, right? So that the loss of information that is happening when the information is flowing from the bottommost person to the topmost, that is, being reduced with this new trend. Second thing is use of a lot of electronic media, not electrical media. We have all seen in the past years how the communication has been changed. So use of Zoom calls, or Teams calls, chat boxes. I think you get the message. And the third trend could be the use of specific language of the land. This is also being more and more prominent. I know this might sound a bit strange. We all know that the language of internet, the English, is by far the default medium of communication in all the emails. But the communication is just not written on the internet, right? We are talking about an organization whose day by day operations are being targeted through this project management. So what happens is all the local emails which are sent within the organization between two people who speak the same local tongue, they exchange the information in the language that they're most comfortable with. So this is mostly seen in all the non-English speaking countries, like the European countries have started it. The Mandarin speaking countries like Japan, China, all these, they were using since the birth of emails, right? They have their own language. We cannot even read their emails. So this is also becoming quite trendy nowadays. So we should also adapt to this. So let's get started with the process. Plan the communications management, manage communications and monitor communications. So these three are the processes that we're going to learn. So let's quickly jump to it. Planning of the communications management. This is nothing but a plan for the project related communication activities and all the relevant information to the correct, related stakeholders is given at the right time, right? So this is the target for this. Although this process is done, like throughout the project, the plan is created at a very early stage. So at the beginning of the project life cycle itself, this plan is created. But that plan is not absolute, right? So they will not just stick to this plan. They will keep on adding some changes to this as the project moves ahead. So shall we go ahead and see what the outputs are? Okay, we have three outputs. As we can see, the first output is the creation of communications management plan. This is but a plan that talks about how well the communications are structured and directed to the right party. So it allows the monitoring of these communications. This plan can include the things like the templates in which the project works, the escalation processes, the process who has to give, the process in which a person has to give the information properly, the person who is going to receive it. All these specifics are very well recorded in this communication management plan. Even the technology that we use for sending this message, it is sometimes also recorded, just like this Zoom call. So shared drive links, SharePoint links, everything is mentioned in the plan, like how we are going to communicate. All this is pre-planned. So secondly, the project management plan gets updated. For example, the component of this project management plan, like the stakeholder engagement plan gets updated. It gets updated that in any new process or techniques that we keep adding to this process, that means project management has to get updated. The project management plan, the original project management plan. And lastly, the project documents also get updated. Typically, the project schedule and the stakeholder register, these are the most affected ones usually, but don't limit yourselves just to these components that I'm referring to. All right, let's check what the inputs are. The project charter, of course, it comes handy. We can make use of resource management plan and stakeholders management plan in the project management plan as the components, the inputs. The enterprise environmental factors along with the project documents, that can be used as inputs. And of course, the organizational process assets also come handy. All these are, you have already learned all these things, right? So if we keep on stressing and repeating these things again, we may lose the time to explain the things that we have not learned before. Okay, so I'm rushing to the tools. So the expert judgment, someone who is expert in the project deliverables, or the communications technology expert, the legal expert regarding the corporate communications, for example. So all those experts are consulted while creating this plan. The communication requirements analysis, right? So this is something new to learn. So it says analysis. What are we analyzing here? The information needs of the stakeholders in the project. So we are analyzing the information needs of the stakeholder. What we will do is first we identify the void, or the need of the information. So we first identify, okay, here we need some information to be given to a particular stakeholder. And then we also identify the source of this information, who can support with this void. So such kind of analysis is communication requirement analysis. So this is typically done using simple boxes, like we have learned this is somebody who needs information, and this is somebody who has that information. So how the flow should happen, right, from A to B. So such diagrammatic representation can be seen in some of the organizations, but typically not required. If you, even if you just identify that, okay, this is the source, this is the need, even that is enough. So that's all about the requirements analysis. And then we have communication technology. It is also a very good tool. But for this to happen successfully, or to make full use of this, we as a project manager has to make the technology accessible to all the stakeholders. Some stakeholders do not have access to all the tools, so we just have to make sure that all the drives are being given access to, all the SharePoint links are being accessible to all the stakeholders. So not just installing the software, but all the related accesses have to be ensured. The communication model, okay, this is also something new that we have not learned so far. It sounds so sophisticated, but trust me, this is quite simple. Only two types of communication models are possible. So what are these? A communication model which is just one way, right? So from A to B, that is one type. And second thing is from A to B, and then a feedback from B to A again. Simple, right? So it's like a person is sending encoded message, and a person B who receives it, he has to decode it. I mean, this need not be as scary as it sounds, but encoding and decoding, you don't focus on the encryption part. This is only for the sake of understanding that a person records a message and then he transmits it via some channel, and then somebody else receives it. On his monitor he can see that email. That's it. It's as simple as that. So, but the main thing to focus here is the models, whether it is a single directional information or interactive type of communication. So what can be the examples of single direction? You might have seen so many, promotional emails, some brochures from the vendors, or so many event related emails that we get to see from HRs. All these are one-sided informations. We cannot give any reply back to them. But when we speak about the two-sided communications, we can talk about the daily email exchanges, about the work statuses, about the project work, or anything that has both information from both directions, right? So these are the two major communication models that we have to learn. The communication methods, this is typically talking about the stakeholders that are using the communication channels. Like, are they pushing the information or are they pulling it? Again, if we talk about the company brochures, the newsletters, the information about all the upcoming trainings and all these are considered to be pushing method of communication. There is no pull here. From the sender to receiver, there is just push method of communication. The pull type of information is like you are being asked to provide some feedback after this lecture, right? So that is the feedback forms. So that is a pull type of information. So those are the, again, two methods that we can discuss. The interpersonal team skills, of course, the soft skills to make the people communicate better, create political awareness, cultural awareness, all these things come under interpersonal team skills. Multiple data representation tools can be used. And of course, meetings are also very important tool in this process. Moving on, managing the communication. Let's quickly see what's new here. Outputs. And before we go, this process just make sure that the information is happening at the required time, right? So managing the time is like you're ensuring that all the process is happening within the agreed time, within the required time, with all the agreements between the people. So, and also this happens throughout the process, not just at one point in time. So if we talk about the outputs here, first thing as an output is the project communications. I think this is also something new that we have not learned so far. So this is nothing but the summary of current status of deliverables. The project management plan gets updated. The if not the complete management plan, typically the process of communication, the communication management plan, the stakeholder engagement plan, anything that is related to the communication gets updated here. Again, similarly, the project documents which are related to the communications, like lessons learned, a stakeholder register, who is being communicated, the issue logs, the result of these communications, they are the issues. So all these things get updated in the project documents. And organizational process assets are being updated. Not so common, right? Why? As you might have observed, only a few of the processes lead to the updation of organizational process assets. Right? Not all of the processes are going to update organizational process assets. So this is one of those few processes. So basically, majority of the project-related documents which are requested as information are, most probably also updated after the feedback from receiver. So it is important that such process assets are also important, updated. That is why this is being updated here. Okay, let's move to the inputs that we need. Again, I'm running a bit quickly here because we have a lot to cover. The project management plan is a very good source. If we talk about project documents, the same ones that we quoted as outputs, the issue log, the change log, the quality reports, the risk reports, all these are part of the project documents. The work performance reports, like the progress reports, the status reports, all these things can be used as inputs. And of course, the default enterprise environmental factors and the organizational process assets are also used as inputs. Let's have a quick look at the tools and techniques. The communication technology, all the communication technology and communication methods that we just discussed in the previous process, everything is applicable also here. The communication skills that are needed. We have not talked about the skills before, I believe. So, this might include, of course, the soft skills like public speaking, the presentation skills, effective speaking skills, whether you're speaking concisely or are you extending the conversation unnecessarily. The non-verbal skills like body gestures, it could be the eye contact when we are speaking. All these communication skills are also important. Again, don't limit only to these skills that I just quoted. You can think of any communication skill that can enhance the management of the communication, and you can apply here. The examples are not just limits to this. Next thing, I believe you all agree how important this PMIS is. So project management information system, all the communication channels, they are all very important. Project reporting. What is project reporting? This is nothing but formally presenting the project related information in specific formats that both the stakeholders or all the stakeholders agree before. So again, interpersonal and team skills, the soft skills like cultural awareness, political awareness, networking, all these things are quite important. And of course, finally, the meetings are also a very good tool when you're managing the communications.